All right, so we come to maybe the most controversial chapter of the Kybalion. Maybe not. Not when I break it down. It's really not going to be at all. But you know, right now it's a hot topic, right? And I am all about really understanding. We talked a lot about duality, positive and negative, masculine and feminine, not male and female. Okay, what this is talking about is duality again, right? All of these principles truly are reflected in each other. It's pretty trippy how that works. It's kind of intense. But this particular idea of gender is that, and it's not, again, it's not binary, right? Like this might be 1 and this might be 0, but there's all these different decimals in between. But the main idea is that, again, the universe is mental, right? And the principle of gender is speaking about our mind and our heart, our subconscious mind and our conscious mind. Okay, so I've got female over on this side. So we're going to represent that with a downward facing triangle. This is masculine, so we're going to represent it with a upward facing triangle. Now, the idea of any esoteric tradition or religion or belief structure or whatever the hell we're going to call it is to unite these two things, right? The Kybalion talks a lot about the will. And I want to mention that there are 2 types of will, okay? There is the will, lowercase, and there is the will, uppercase. Now we're getting into some pretty cool shit. So the will uppercase is like the will of the Creator, okay? It is a sacred and holy thing that if you're trying to serve the will, then you're going to be doing something that is beneficial to humanity, that is promoting peace, love, understanding, wisdom, virtue, basically. This is supporting virtue and bringing joy and love into the world. Now this represents, it's not a bad thing, but this just represents the individual will, right? Like you could be either serving your will, you know, maybe you're a little bit of a hedonist, whatever. And so you're like to eat a lot of donuts or something, you know, maybe a little bit promiscuous. Well, it serves the little will. You know, then again, there are sexual things and other weird spiritual practices that may serve the higher will. But just knowing that that's a thing is really cool. So that's a difference here in the Kybalion and other esoteric literature. As you start to look through some of these old books and stuff, you will notice that you will find it capitalized here. Okay, the will. Okay. All right, so back to gender, masculine and feminine. Okay, this is really interesting. There's a lot of people talking about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. It's the same, you know. I mean, divine just makes it seem a little bit more pretentious, but it's the same thing. And the idea here is to unite these two things, and that's what we have here in the center, which can also be represented by the star of sun and moon. The masculine principle is the sun or soul. The feminine principle is the moon or man. The star of Solomon. Whoa, dude, that's trippy, man. Even getting into the Bible, which is kind of cool. Yeah, this stuff is super intriguing to me. But the idea of any esoteric literature is to unite heart and mind. It's no different than any other book on the subject. It's really about this. This is how we find the true will. And it's also how we can motivate ourselves and put ourselves on an amazing life track, okay? And the trick to this, to activating the will, oddly enough, you know, the Kybalion talks a lot about how most of us are not using our conscious minds and that the will is very masculine principle. But the irony of it is that the will is keyed off of the heart, okay? So, yeah, it's true. We need to use our conscious mind to focus in on our heart because that's the feminine. The masculine can see the feminine, and the feminine can see the infinite space, the mental world, the all, the infinite, the space of variations, the dream world, the metaphysical world, whatever it is that thoughts are made out of, and the what do they call it in quantum? I think it's like the information, no, it's the data, I don't know. The data, whatever. There's 8,000 different words for this. But the idea that the metaphysical world, we'll just go with that, is accessible only by the subconscious or the feminine mind, right? So it's the conscious mind's job to pay attention to the subconscious mind, right? That's what being conscious is. Being conscious is being conscious of your subconscious, right? So we dig into that, we look into that, it reflects to us what we need to do, and then we act, and then we can do the will, right? The big W will. So that's the basic idea of gender. It's like gender is present in all things and all this, and it goes on and on and on and on. This has nothing to do with sex. It has, it's reflected by sex, and we see that in nature. But really it's about uniting the two hemispheres of our brain, left and right, subconscious and conscious, right? And so we want to look inside, see the reflection as above, so below, right? So if our heart is into something, then our mind is going to also reflect our desire or our passion for that. Let's say passion's better than desire, right? We don't want to desire stuff. That's going to push it away from us. But really, when we do find something that really resonates with us, something that we're really passionate about, that we love, that's really coming from our heart. And the more we pay attention to that with our conscious mind, the more we see that, the more that we can actively take steps, make decisions, and create cool stuff. And that's how anything's created between the masculine and the feminine, right? And that's how we bring creative things into the world. We have to have both principles. You can't have one without the other. So you've got to have the masculine mind and the feminine heart. Where that inspiration comes from, that's that creative, just water, just deep, deep water. And then you've got the mind of the sky, right? Where the sky meets the water, where the heart meets the mind, left and right hemispheres of the brain. That's all esoteric stuff is about. That's why I say there's really only one book I would recommend that you ever need to read. Of course, if you're curious like I am, then you want to read a bunch and find out a bunch of different ideas and theories and stuff like that, which is great. But Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson, fantastic. Also really like the Kybalion, but it's esoteric and a little bit hard to understand. But if you understand this, heart and mind, uniting those two, it's what every religion's based on. This creates what Transurfing calls outer intention, right? It ignites the fire of the will, big W, okay? And then things start to work out on their own. They just start to line up because you're using this power of activating the two hemispheres of your brain, and it creates charm, it creates beauty, it exudes love, it draws things to you, it repels things from you, and it's a very sacred and holy thing. That's what it's all about. And it's found by looking into your heart with your mind. So, we've seen this symbol before, and that's why I love it so much. It's so simple, and it says everything. Boom, look into your heart with your conscious mind, feel it, express it, and blast that Care Bear stare. I noticed that Dave Chappelle used the Care Bear stare thing in his last special, and I think it was awesome. I believe 100,000% in it, as silly as it may seem. All right, folks, it's doing it for the Kybalion. I'm going to be gone for a couple of months, okay? So I've got podcasts set to drop. Please check those out. Check me out on Gumroad. If I'm not around, I'll try and get people to ship hat if somebody winds up ordering one. So don't worry, and I'll be in touch with you via email. I'll be on a cruise ship for a while, and then I'll be in LA at the end of February, or the next to last week in February. So like the February 18th or so until about the 24th or 5th. So if you're in LA, you want to hang out, shoot me a line. And then I'll be back March 1st, but I'm going to be working on a film project for the entirety of March. Very likely I'll be working on a film project in April as well. So I will be very busy. However, I'm going to keep up with the podcast. I'm also working on a startup called The Flying Squid. It's a comedy organization, and we're starting a comedy club here in Athens. We just put up our first podcast, if you want to check that out. It's the Flying Squid Comedy channel on YouTube. You can also check out flyingsquidcomedy.com. That's got all our offerings on there, improv classes, ways to get in touch, stand-up workshops, open mics, all that stuff. Keeping speech as free as possible, and trying to bring as much culture as we can to this lovely town and beyond. So check out that podcast. I'm hosting it, and it'll be a lot of fun comics on there.